Okay, hello everyone. I'm moderating this panel discussion with these amazing people. And a fun fact, I have 3 former colleagues on this panel discussion, so I will feel that it's going to be like a friendly conversation, but I also hope it's going to be very insightful for both sides, for developers and the publishers. First thing, I would like to start, of course, with the introductions, and let's start with our wonderful panelists. So we can go from Michal, and then finish with me, and I will start the discussion.
Hi there, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thanks for being invited. So I'm Michael, so it makes it a bit easier to pronounce than Michal for most of you, probably. I've been working in the video games industry since almost 20 years now, with both the studios and the publishers. I've started in CD Projekt. I worked with Katerina recently in Chimera and Remote Control Productions. So I hope I will input here a point of view from both sides, from publisher point of view and from the studio point of view.
Yes, hello everyone, my name is Halwe. I'm the Business Development Manager at ByteRockers Games, a small, well, I would say mid-sized indie game dev studio from Berlin actually. Okay, we got some locals. Yeah, myself, I spent roughly a decade in the industry now, mostly in publishing, 8 years in total, where I also got to work with Katerina. Then I moved to an investor/consultant company, and I'm now finally on the good side of the games, which is the indie game dev side. Yeah, happy to be here, and Katerina told us to share a quick icebreaker story. And so when I was still a young business development manager in publishing, it's a very humbling and boring story, but you know, I was working on a deal, and the deal got very, very complicated. Even the business terms I could not explain to the other side, and subsequently, and rightfully so, they chose a different partner because the deal got just way too complicated for them. And so that's also a lesson learned when you are making a deal. But we'll go into that.
Yes. For the icebreaking story, actually, I want details, so we can come up to that after introductions.
He was just accelerated the thing. Hello, everybody. My name is Jeannie Odreman. I'm working at Gamigo as a director of publishing. I have 20 years in the industry as well, in the dev side, in many companies, and now on the publishing side. I also work with these 2 guys together. So yeah, this world is really small, the video game world. And I'm very happy here to share insights and knowledge, and I hope you enjoy this conversation.
Hello. Okay, this is working as well, fantastic. Hi, my name is Christina. I'm CEO and founder of Thoughtfish, a Berlin-based company. We are here for 11 years now. We are pioneers of real-world gaming, so our approach is what happens immersively with games if we factor in the immediate surroundings of the player. We did this in the past with mobile free-to-play games. We are currently working on VR and MR titles. Last Thursday, Living Room, the mixed reality title for Meta Quest 3 and 3S just launched. Take a look. Thank you. And we are also working on PC console, showcasing what would happen if you place a game on top of the real world. We're working together with a lot of different partners, platforms, publishing partners, smaller and very, very big ones. So yeah, sharing the perspective from the developer side.
How do you follow that? Right, so I'm Adam, I'm head of business development for Kwalee, so I do all businessy bits, so a lot less exciting than most of the panel, to be fair. Myself and Katerina have never worked together, so I feel really left out. Aww. So I've been in the industry for about 10 years. I started in tech, so telecoms and online security stuff for big partners, and then I got really bored of all that, went into IP, and then I went into game scouting for Team 17, and then I now run business development for the PC console division of Kwalee.
Thank you very much for all your introductions. I'm really happy to see that people are changing companies, and it's going to be also like the perspective from different sides, and exactly like Jeannie's experience working on the developer side and on the publisher side, it can give perspective from both. About myself, very quickly, I'm Katerina Burbela. I'm working now at Homa, mobile publisher from Paris. So mobile developers hit me. Yeah. So, as Jan already hinted a little bit, we will start with the icebreaking story to also like warm up everything and maybe make some fun, or I hope not super sad stories, but that's also very useful and insightful. So please, can you everyone share one story from your experience when the deal broke? for some reason. Yeah, you can finish the story, Jan, thanks.
I mean, the deal didn't happen, so end of story.
So,
They chose somebody else because it was too complicated for me to communicate to them why they should sign with us on these deal terms.
you were on the publisher side or on
I
the
was on
developer?
the publishing side, yes. And I was very still a young, green behind my ears, so I didn't know any better. I didn't, consult back with, because I was just a messenger back in the day. Of course, how it goes, like if you have a bigger company, you get the terms dictated. And so it's also important to know the responsibility of the stakeholder that you're communicating with.
So basically, communication, negotiation didn't work out.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I see. Michal, any interesting stories?
Oh yeah, I mean, through these 20 years I got quite a lot of them, so I was like thinking to figure out about one, but it was quite difficult. So I would rather say not an exact story, but like the most common reason for failing the deals for me through these 20 years was it was always about pace setting, or so-called timing of the deal. So it was either too fast or too slow, meaning that finding this fine line of balance between whether you want a deal to be closed quickly or you want it to be closed when everyone is ready to close it was always the biggest challenge. And in most of the cases, my deals were falling through because either I wanted to close them too fast and the other side was like felt too pressurized or just started to suspect something fishy is there. He's like too much, willing to sell us something probably broken. Or the other way around, also in many cases. So it's like it was prolonging and everyone forgot about it and then it all fell through. So I would say this would be a story of most of my life. So of course I did close a couple of deals, I need to add as well. Though I would need to say also minority rather than majority. But whenever I wasn't closing them, it was always because of the perception of the time in the deal, right?
So time management courses, please.
Well, and also worth mentioning that the time is that issue here because it's such a fast-moving industry that, let's say, in many cases when I was starting the negotiations, for example, with the publisher, right? So me trying to pitch game, then it was like the publisher were broke when we finished, right? So at first they had the money at the beginning, and then 6 months later or 8 months later, it's like poof. There's no publisher or money. So I'm not sure if it's a good case for failing, because maybe failing this deal saved me in the end, in my game. But yeah, that would be, I guess, my story then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also have many stories for both sides, but I think one of the interesting one was a developer we work with. So we basically did the whole deal with them, and I started to work with them. But then every time that we asked for improvements of the game based on data, they was like, okay, but you need to pay this. And we're like, okay, but we have a deal, so how will we pay this? And then we discovered the guys were more like a working for hire company than a real developer of their own brand. And then we couldn't move forward because it was really complicated to pay every time that we asked for something to move this game forward. They just asked for money. Mm-hmm. And this is something that you definitely need to check it out when you do deals. The contract need to be really clear that what is the involvement for both sides, because if not, you can have many really uncomfortable surprise.
Maybe also some due diligence, right? That the expectations are set, so everyone knows with whom they're dealing from both sides.
Yeah, but it's also it's good that you check it out in the contract because at the end of the day, it's the only tool you have in both sides. Not talking about just the publisher. You have in both sides the only way that you can solve this issue at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I have a very nice follow-up on this one. So my favorite one is really short. It made me laugh, to the surprise of the publishing partner. But we were in negotiations, and then I got the first draft, and in the first draft there was the exact opposite of what we talked about. And while I'm asking the publisher, hey, come on, here, clause XYZ, we said we want to do it this and that way. And the publisher said, yes, I know we said that. Don't pay too much attention to the contract because we're living it a different way. Ooh. Yeah, sure. You do contracts because you still can talk to each other, and you do contracts where you don't write down what you want to have. I was, to the surprise of the publishing partner, I was just laughing. I couldn't help myself. I started laughing, and then I left the room. We never talked again. So it wasn't the most polite thing from my side, but this is for me a 1,000% turn away You're not taken seriously. This is an absolute bullshit. Never sign anything which you haven't understood and which you didn't agree to. If you can agree on something, how it is done, it should reflect this in the contract period.
Thank you.
100% on the publisher side as well. Like, absolutely, devs always get legal representation. Make sure you know what you're signing. Anyway, God, so many failures in contracts. And I've been biz dev for so long. You win some, you lose some, and then they kind of balance out. But when you have 1,000 contracts, you're bound to lose a bunch. One thing I'll say is, I was back in my telecoms days, signed a massive deal for a global network, and there was like 5 or 6 of us working on the project, and everyone was assuming that someone else was going to take the next step with the deal. And it went on and on and on, and then eventually the customer just went elsewhere. So what I will say is, if everyone's responsible, then no one's responsible. So when you're doing a deal, make sure there is a person who is responsible for that deal, and they're the guys who are going to push it forward. So if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. So bear that in mind.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing the stories. And coming from your stories that you shared, Adam, Christina, can you share if you can spot some or spotted in the your experience some red flags in the beginning of communication? So Christina, from your side on the publisher, and Adam on your side with the developers, right ahead.
I think the most important thing, first of all, is that you can properly communicate. So you know who you are talking to, you have the responsible person, someone who can do decisions actually. So the more people there are in between, the harder it gets. So if there are people in between, which there are if you're talking to bigger companies, then make sure that you understood the process and the steps you have to complete until a contract can be done. And then for me personally, the most, apart from being able to talk about everything, especially in negotiation, it's incredibly important that you can just really ask, okay, what do you mean with this clause if you don't fully get it? And if you don't get it or disagree, your partner has to explain what kind of risk this clause is going to cover so that you can counter and can have your risks considered too. The funniest thing in negotiations, it happens like in 60% of the cases when I flag a paragraph I don't understand. I can read legal documents, but there are lots of paragraphs I don't understand, although I'm a trained lawyer. I flag this and simply ask the question, what do you mean here? In the majority of the cases, this clause goes away, or I get the information, oh my God, I don't understand it either. Or there is a very good explanation why this clause exists, and I can counter with, okay, if you need to deal with the risk on your side, my risk, which is falling out of it, is this and that. So we need to find something to cover my risk as well. And then you can find really good compromises and contracts you can work with for a very, very, very long time with a partner.
Thank you.
From the publisher side, pretty similar actually, is it's about communication. The biggest red flag when we start having conversations with the developer is they can't communicate their vision, they don't know what they want from the game, they don't know why that game's being made, they just want to make a game. Oh, I've seen this one's been successful, I want to do it. If there's no passion there, there's no real drive to do it, then it's a big red flag for me when we're talking to them and they just don't get why that game needs to exist or what they're trying to do with the game. When you have that passion, it can really drive processes forward from a publisher's side. You know they're going to stick with the game, they know they're going to make it, you know your money's in a good place, and the game's probably going to be good, right? Because you know it's supposed to fit a gap in the market. So it's really important to understand your vision and be able to communicate that with a publisher.
And in terms of communication, so Jan, Jeannie, you worked a lot, of course, with international teams, both developers and publishers. Were there ever a problem of, or no problem, maybe issues or some blockers, maybe cultural differences? So maybe there is someone has an attitude just like I used to communicate with everyone in this nasty way, communication way, cultural differences, anything to cover here?
I mean, I think communication is of course differently, not only for cultural in general. You should have let's say proper communication, that sometimes you need to have take some different angles, especially when you work with Asian developers. It's really challenging, really challenging, because this not only language related, it's also cultural breach, is complicated. And I have a case specifically where the developers, because in certain countries in Asia, they have a culture like they only need to speak with an equal in the parent, in the structure. And then there was one of the product manager who worked with me, and she was a girl, and this person was really disrespectful, and I also have to tell him what is going on. You cannot try my team like this. And then you need to work a lot, when especially Asian developers, you need to work a lot in communication and try to find a middle ground with that. But also happen with developers also in the West. So you need to really have a clear communication. Transparency is key. Be honest in every single time is the most important thing. Even if the truth is not nice, if the timeline go 3 months more than you expected, you always need to try to find a balance in communication and be transparent. But yeah, for me, challenging has been work with Asian publisher developers. It's really tough, but you learn a lot.
And also the time zone difference itself, right? If they are working 8 or 9 hours ahead of you, you have to have personnel available that is working for these time zones, because there's only so much overlap that you can create. And since the games industry is a global industry, it goes both ways, right? So we are here in the middle. We have people working 8 hours ahead of us, but we also have people working 8 hours behind us. And the bigger the company that you're working in, or that is your partner, there will be many different puzzle pieces all around the world, basically. But yeah, respect, of course, huge important, but also experience helps you to understand the other side better, helps you to understand the process better. And in that process, the publisher can be a guiding figure, doesn't always have to be, and establish kind of a communication protocol. Because at the end of the day, usually the publisher is the one that has the more experience than the developer, mostly in the indie case. AA, AAA, it's usually sometimes even different. And the language barrier for sure, because you don't want to end up communicating over AI tools. Yeah, it's possible, but you lose a lot of important information, but also like the intent behind it. But I would say before signing a deal, there's enough time to figure out if the communication loop is actually working, if the feedback loop is working. Even if you've never met them in person, you should be able to tell, like, what does my gut feeling say to me? Like, can we work with those people? Do they share the same vision? Yeah, and so yeah, be considerate, because not only culturally, but individuals can also be different. You know, people can be introverted, people can be extroverted. You know, ADHD is a thing, for example, and so always take into consideration that also the other person on the other end might just have a bad day. You know.
Also, the formal way that you speak to us, so like, "Hello, dude, I send you this," and like, "I know you're dude," you know. And I understand that this industry is really like John, but yeah. You need to also figure out how you want to speak with them.
Yeah, and I guess like the longer you communicate with your potential partner, or already like if the deal is signed a partner, and you can see, yeah, if you can go into dude mode, or better to stay more professional, as like it's all unwritten rules that everyone kind of know about respect. About vision, and Michal, did you have experience when, for example, the deal can break because developer and publisher have different understanding and vision on creative ownership, right? So who decides how the game is gonna proceed further in development, in events, live ops, anything like related to it? Is it like on developer side because it's their passion, right? Their baby, their creation, or publisher can also jump in and then suggest something?
Well, yes, that's one of, I think, the most touchy topics, right? More or less between developers and publishers. I would say majority of publishers nowadays, the modern ones, let's call them this way, they don't take the IP from the developers. So that is important to know, and I think it is how it should be, right? There are sometimes an options, of course, that the publishers can take the IP afterwards. But that's separate clauses, and that's always separately negotiated. But of course, in the process of collaboration between developer and the publisher, there is a certain work done that is a new thing, at top of the game itself, right? It's the know-how of the publisher. It could be lots of different things. For example, let's say in the process of collaboration, the name of the game can change, right? Because both sides understood that the previous game title was bad from whatever marketing, commercial reasons, right? Then comes the question, who owns that new name? Is it now invented by the publisher? And because publisher invested in it, it's his money, and sort of marketed it. It's his own, and then what happens with the developer, right? If the paths part, who owns the name to the game, because the game under the old game is unknown, so basically it's useless in a way, right? So and it could be easily blocked by the publisher later on. So yes, there's lots of things that needs to be well covered, which are not covered sometimes by the initial agreement, but if they are a fruit of the collaboration, they should also be covered from the legal perspective, and that is also worth mentioning, that it's not just this original agreement that you work with. Later on, you should also guard exactly the ownership of what belongs to whom in this process and who invented what, and have proofs for that, basically, right? I had this case once that in the process of development, in the process of marketing the game name changed, right? And afterwards, there was a legal dispute who actually invented that name, right? Was original's idea of publisher, or was it the developer, right? And it ended up with a legal dispute, and not a nice, let's say, right, partition between the two. So IP is, I would to just say recap. So IP is the treasure you own as a developer, and you should pay a lot of attention, maximum, to securing it from every angle. Never give it to anyone, or never write under the clauses that would allow someone to take it under any circumstances. And this is something to guard. This is also, and the process and remember that IP is not just the game. It's also all the universe you create around it, and have proofs that it's you that created that and no one else, right, in the process. That would be my take on that.
Thank you. And I would like to come to very interesting or spicy topic, which a lot of people, especially developers, are very cautious about, but it's super important, and I think we shouldn't be humble of talking, just straightforward. Financials. So financial terms, revenue share. What can you share from your experience, Christina, Adam, how it's usually can break the deal or can have some complications in negotiation process?
It's all about being fair, right? And fair is a difficult thing when one side's contributing creatively and one side's contributing financially. It's a difficult thing to kind of balance out. And from a publisher side, we kick in a lot of the money and the marketing and the QA and all the holistic things that go into making a game happen. However, the creative vision and the IP is owned by the developer. So when it comes to it being fair, you have to understand what's at stake for each of the two parties. So what happens in the event of failure, what happens in the event of success, and making sure that everyone has a fair slice of the pie. In my opinion, a dev should never accept, or a publisher should never offer less than 50% of net revenue to the dev. It should be split down the middle. And if it's disproportionately swung one way or another, what are you going to get for that swing, right? If it's going to be that the publisher wants 60% instead of 50%, then what are they giving you for that? You have to understand that as well. And make sure you're protecting your assets and your long-term studio. Ultimately, I totally agree, you should always own your IP. The sale of an IP should always be on the developer. It shouldn't be on the publisher to force a sale or to demand a sale or to own the IP from the outset. But it's about understanding what's going to be fair for that project. What's the total budget of the project, what the publisher putting in, what's the developer putting in, how much time, effort, etc. And then push for a fair deal. As a publisher, obviously, we're always going to want to get our recoup in our costs, and then we're going to split everything 50-50. And I think that should be a way to do things. Whether that recoup is 100% or less, that's up for negotiation and worth a chat about. But it should always be fair. Both parties should finish that deal knowing that if the game's successful, everyone's going to be successful, not one party or the other.
Okay, it's really hard to continue from here. So I think my additional 5 cents, what's really helpful is, first of all, doing your own homework. You create your own forecasts. And when you have your own forecast, put in the number and the rev share you agreed with or you want to agree with the publisher to, and then be really diligent in putting it on a timeline and not forgetting that there are a lot of payment times until money really comes to your account. And then look what that does to the game, how much you invested, how much risk you have been taking. look at how much risk the publisher is taking, and so on and so forth. So it's really important to see, okay, what do I get for what I give away? And it is really enlightening to do this, and it should be the homework every developer studio is doing. One thing you can also ask for is the forecast the publisher did, because one majorly important question of the developer studio while figuring out who your publishing partner is how do you think you can move the needle? So very important. The gist is not the publisher is there as a, I'm so sorry to say this, the publisher is not a walking money bag. So even if they are doing funding, the most important thing in the end, I mean, if you require funding, you require funding. But in the end, you need to be convinced as a developer studio that this is the right partner to get your game in front of as many eyes as possible, because you together are creating a success. So if you can make it that the publishing partner feels like an extension of your team with the diverse and different perspectives coming from the marketing side, and you being trusted that you as a developer can do smart things, and you can trust the publishing partner that they can do their job properly, then you can just talk everything through. And that's what you want to get at. And this also requires every partner to do decent homework.
That's wonderful. I can sign up for every word that you said. It totally makes sense. And I guess it's a very mature and smart attitude towards how to run business in this industry. Also about financials, you guys, I would like to ask, did you have any experience with super unrealistic budgets or unrealistic terms where it could actually break the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, and it's really good what you say, is we get all the time very strange forecasts from developers to approach to us looking for publishing, and then you see really delusional numbers, and it's like, why do you think that you would get in 3 months 1 million? How? You know, I think it's very important. I mean, especially with small companies, and there are not a lot of experience. It's really good that you find someone to teach you how to do this and to put real numbers there, because then it not happen like you go to the publisher and the publisher see the numbers and say this is not true. How can I trust on you? Just look what are you asking for, or look what you expect to get. So I think it's really important, and this is something, as I say, no, it's not one time, it's all the time that I receive very unrealistic forecasts. From the different developers that want to work with us. And yeah, as you mentioned, you need to be like a match between what the publisher expects and what you expect. Especially be transparent with the numbers. If your game has been in the market for some reason, or you have like early access and you got KPI, share the real KPI. Don't inflate the numbers, because this is not positive. And this is what normally people do because they want to have a deal. But if you do that, with the time, you will lose the opportunity, because the publisher have experience and they know that you are trying to sell something, and it's not true. So yeah, it's very common, and this is why I say, if you don't know how to do calculation forecast, try to find, there are a lot of online tools that help you to do it. Go and be honest with the publisher. I never do this in my life. And maybe you can find a room together and they start the trust from the beginning. But it's really important, don't send crazy numbers, because at the end of the day, the deal is not going to happen.
Yeah, and speaking about financials, Adam mentioned already the revenue share, the recoupment, and you want to define what actually gets deducted before anybody gets any payment whatsoever. So usually you're not sharing on gross revenues, because that doesn't make any sense, because there are so many deductibles, not only tax, platform costs, distribution costs. You want to know at the end of the day what you are actually receiving, and also what gets recouped, because that can also be a negative calculation for you if you're not paying attention. And especially what goes into recoupment, I've sadly seen publishers inflate their QA costs just that they can recoup more and pay their people, and basically reduce the financial risk for themselves. And at the end of the day, the developer, even though they were quite successful, it took them 3 months to see the first revenues. And for a successful game, that shouldn't be the case, right? If you can recoup, it should be like within the first week, within the first month, because then it's also a sustainable, successful partnership, which of course it can always go sour, it can always go bad. There's a lot of side effects as well, but be sure that your calculation is correct, that the fare is shared, that the deductibles are fair, because the publisher, they will also have third parties that they're working with to facilitate that success. They will have sub-licensees, for example, in Asia, if they are not very prominent over in Asia, and you've licensed them worldwide rights to your game, you want to make sure that they have local and dedicated partners for that, but these partners also typically take a share. Like, is that deductible, is that not deductible? So yeah, be aware of this as well.
That's great. And Michal, for example, a developer really wants to work with this particular publisher, and everything that was just said is not there. So like, I know terms are not fair, it's quite harsh, but like developer is really dreaming about working with particularly this publisher because they like their game, so they're cool friends in the industry or whatnot. So is it the problem that developer just chose, let's say, badly the publisher? Or maybe like there is some other way how to make it happen? Because there are such stories, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would think that there are more stories of a bad cooperation between publisher and developer than the good ones, for sure, right, in terms of numbers. I agree. First of all, I need to admit, I agree with everything that was said, but I also would need to comment from my side that it's very idealistic, that what was said, right? And life is not that idealistic in the end, right? So of course, this is great concept that you need to find your publisher that matches everything, that is transparent, has money, has passion to your game, has great marketing, and you're like, you know, and treats you like a prince, right, or a princess. That's amazing, right? I mean, I would definitely sign under that, right? But the truth is that if you are a developer, you are like desperate for money. You have no money, right? You're desperate for time because you're running out of money soon. And anyone interested in your game is good publisher, right? So at the end. So, of course, now when anyone is interested, and let's say this is just one company, right? You need to apply all these mentioned earlier criteria, and they don't fit it. That's the question, like, should I take the money, or should I take the honor and then look for a new, better publisher, right? Which may never come, right? Because that's another problem. So this is the dilemma, I would say, right? And in many cases, then again, as a developer, you need to answer like, what is really important for me, like, and that's going to be set for the publishers. Maybe sometimes it's worth just to take the money to have a first game released, even if you know it's not going to be a huge success, but at least you go through the cycle, through the process. You learn the tough way, right? But still. Right? But at least you get funded, right? That's also important. In the end, we as developers, as an artist, our ultimate goal is to get our creation onto the market, right? Whatever the cost, right? In a way. So it is a bit, yeah, I know it's a bit sad. I mean, no, it's a bit maybe cruel, right, from the publisher perspective. But it is like that. So, this is the challenge over here. Of course, again, I would also agree with the fact that you need to do the background check for each of the publisher to fit if it's a good fit. The most common check I would do is still to check how the publisher is performing in your genre, with the games similar to you. If the publisher does have a whole myriad of games from all various genres, that's one of the red flags for me, for example. Like someone's doing general everything means he doesn't do really good at anything specifically, in my opinion at least. So if I do, I don't know, city builders, I would look for guys that released at least a couple of them lately, and they have more than 17 reviews on Steam, right? Because, you know, what do I need a publisher for that releases serious games in series when they have 120 reviews each, right? It's useless. I only need his money, right? That means those guys can only fund, and they can't do any good marketing in the end. So, so that would be my first thing. Then the second one would be, of course, the calculation like from the other games that this publisher have, how many of the owners of these games are my potential new customers? Because nobody can promise you, and none of the publisher can promise you a new clients or customers or gamers, but they own some of the ones that they already published, right? So if there is a connection between your game and their audience, there's a high chance they're gonna deliver you what they promise. So let's say, I don't know, like, again, City Builder, I would, of course, definitely go for Hooded Horse, for example, right? With the most exciting example of publishers lately. They have similar games, they have success, they have millions of followers. That's a good match for my game, for sure, right? I know that even if they fail on doing any external marketing, if they just announce this game to the audience, they have already, we're gonna help my game as well, right? So, so I would say this is this kind of a combination of factors you need to take under consideration when choosing the publisher. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I hope that developers and publishers will find each other, and it's going to be exactly how you described about this, like fair, which is questionable and up to discussion, but let's say fair terms. And they will like communication between each other, creative ownership is established, IP belongs to developer, as you mentioned, this is like the key. And Christina, you were mentioning about never sign something that you don't understand. So how important are the particular operational terms in the contract, you know, like milestone production, because usually developers are coming to the publishers when the game is not finished, most of the cases. So then, of course, it should be like written down, I guess, right, the roadmap. Where might be some also like red flags in this operational procedural inputs in the contract?
So many things. Okay, it's really important which stage you're in with the game. So if a game is really early, then obviously there are different ways of doing it, right? So there are publishers out there who say you're ready when you're ready, and we are paying you on a monthly basis. That's nice. That's a very new concept. I haven't heard it often. It's really nice for the developer, because the game can have enough time. But usually you're stuck with milestones. And defining milestone deliverables is a bit of an art form, because as a developer, you don't want to do waterfall. You still want to be iterative, you still want to test a lot, you don't want to run to the terms of the contract where you figured out, oh, this will my game turn to shit because one assumption was wrong. So be cautious in what you put in there, do only the stuff in the milestones you really know about, and better to under-promise and surprise everyone than to over-promise and then not deliver. So be very, very cautious. So that's very important. One thing we talked about in this group earlier was also things like, so when it comes to operational things, what's happening when you don't hit a milestone, or when there is disagreement, or the game develops in a different way. There needs to be stuff in there which is allowing you to talk about this and gives you enough time to come to. So if you fail a milestone, then you need some time to rectify and how this is all done. But this is all pretty standard stuff. There are things like termination of convenience. And I think you will want to add something to that, but termination of convenience is something you easily find in a contract, and this is very uncomfortable for a game developer, because this means if my publisher is just changing all the strategies, it can kill your game, and then you have a team which you might have ramped up, you have a lot of cost, you can't get rid of these people, you don't want to get rid of these people, you trained them for a long period of time, but you still have cost and you don't have a product anymore. There's this wonderful thing called termination of convenience fee, which needs to be generous enough that you can do countermeasures, can put your whole team on a second game, do a lot of other things so that you're not stuck and your company is not dying. There can be a compensation for that. I would never sign a termination of convenience clause without a real proper termination of convenience fee. I know you will come to the point again that this is a bit all of the ideal we're talking about. If we don't talk about ideals, we will never get there. Yeah, but there is also the part that if you're doing compromises on the ideal, be sure you know why. Do you only do a game for prestige so that you're out in the market? Revenues don't count at all. Do you do an aspirational game, something super innovative where you do not really expect revenues? Is this going to be your breakthrough game? Pay a lot of attention to the goals you actually want to hit.
Thank you. Adam, from publisher perspective, did it ever happen that, let's say, you wrote down everything like this milestone and roadmap, the production, but some, I don't know, methodology or some vocabulary still didn't work with the developer, or maybe not exactly in your personal experience, but in general, might there be problems with that?
It can do. I think that's and how you do the milestones. So if you're a publisher and you're dictating milestones to a developer, that is completely arse about face. Like you should always have the developer writes the milestones, and then the publisher iterates within those milestone frameworks. You have to. I think you're right. Waterfall is awful. You need to be able to iterate on the game. So you need to have not only deliver X asset, you also need to have to what level of quality or what level of development is that asset delivered to, and have that to be able to iterate within the milestones as they go. But if you have a publisher who is leading the milestone discussion, then that's probably the wrong way to do it. So I think you have to have a publisher who is willing to let the developer be creative and control the creative process, or to have the publisher is understanding how that creative process needs to be financially rewarded. And it's a very, very complicated way of, we'll deal with our bit, you guys deal with your bit. I mean, that's how it should be, I think. And if you can get that right, you get that balance right, then it can be really good. If you can get it wrong, it can, as you say, absolutely murder a game like 3 milestones in. So you need to make sure that it is a completely open and honest discussion. I know it is a bit aspirational to have that. However, I think it's where we should definitely go in, that developer creates the milestones, publisher creates the financial matrix to help deliver those milestones. I also agree that there should be a kill fee if a termination convenience happens, and it should be contractually standard.
Thank you. And in this case, it's very important to be very transparent in your communication and build this trust between 2 partners. Can you guys share some experience or some advice how actually make it happen? So you guys from developer side, Jeannie, you probably can share from the publisher side.
Yeah, as I always mention, and I know it's hard, but be transparent. So always you commit with milestone, the developer commit with a milestone. It's something that you also as a publisher say, yeah, okay, cool. But then sometimes happen that they cannot reach a milestone for whatever reason. They didn't see the scope was too big. And then you need to find a solution because you have a deadline as a publisher, but of course the developer cannot be crunched forever. It's not the idea, because then the quality of your game will be also jeopardized. So as a publisher, you also need to understand. So yeah, I feel like the most important thing when there's especially milestone topics is they cannot be reached. You need to have a transparent and honest conversation how this can be solved. Is as a publisher you need to move your release date. That is something that again is hard because you have a lot of discussion with consoles or marketing plan, but it's better to have this conversation on time and not try to stand as a developer all the time this conversation and deep promise to the publisher that then you don't deliver. So I think it's really important to have honest, to try to understand why the delivery is not happening. Is this something as a publisher you can help? But I think as a developer, it's really important that you be honest what is going on. And yeah, we're experiencing this, and it's something that I'm happy that this transparency is there, but also there are some interest sometimes for the management of the development management have a different speech than the developers itself. That is something what is interesting to see as well. But yeah, I think be honest and transparent.
But on that is also a great topic, these milestones in the agreement. So what I would advise practically is first, for sure, keep the milestones as a schedule of milestones as an addendum to the contract, as a separate kind of piece of it. And then each milestone needs to be received by the publisher, and best way is to get it also in written, this receival of this milestone. And then keep it rolling, so as you change between the milestones, it's always, I never signed an agreement that didn't have the changes in milestones. Always, the first plan of milestones is like, it gets fucked in the middle of the way, right? So for sure, like every milestone needs to be always updated. But what is important is to keep a track of changes in the milestones in the duration of the agreement. So every time the milestone is changed, you need a new addendum to the agreement where you put just like bricks in the, like A was pushed to milestone 2, right? The component C is now not 30, but 50% in milestone 1, and then it's going to be 50 in milestone 2. Just to keep the track of how the milestones were changed during the process of development, to avoid, in the very last moment, the discussion whether you delivered or not. Because if it's all kept in the emails or WhatsApp or Discord or Slack, whoever is using it, then the tracking of what was the initial milestone plan and what was the final one is really difficult, right, in the end. So it's a bit of a paper approach. You generate a lot of addendums. I had like 16, for example, in one agreement, but at least we knew, right? So how many times we changed it, right? Because waterfall sucks, everyone knows it, and we always push something, right, between the milestones.
Yeah, just one quick final thing, be as proactive as possible, because I've seen it so many times that developers, they either delay the milestone, they deliver it, but it's unfinished, they know it, they don't communicate it, or they come on the day of the milestone, the day before the milestone, say like, hey, this is not going to work out. And when you're leveling with a publisher, you can work it out. Sometimes, there's overrun payments where you might need to sacrifice a little bit more rev share in order to get more money and finish everything or get more time. But if you're a studio that's also working with investors and the publisher isn't giving you any money, you need to turn to an investor. And the publisher only takes from the project, but investors can take from your company. And that's a much bigger loss than you have than working with a publisher.
I think to reiterate on that, yeah, so the communicate openly, honestly, and often. I completely agree as well. If you're going to change the milestones, get it changed in the contract. So that's where you're legally at in your framework.
I also want to add something, sorry. It's one thing, it's communication, but also expectation management. I mean, at the beginning of the project, you have a vision, you know what you want to do, but how the features are shaping up in detail, this is happening while you're developing. So one thing we are doing, and this was a very, very good tool for us, we are internally doing a sprint end meeting where the whole company is presenting what they did in the game or in the games we are doing over the last sprint, which is a beautiful presentation. We love it. Internally, it's just like celebrating all the cool stuff we did, and it's amazing how much a team can do in a time period of a sprint. But we're taking this presentation and we're sending this out to our partners. Just showing, okay, this is what we worked on. Depending on the partnership, we include sections like the feature list, or we include section like what's coming next, to give complete transparency where we are in the dev cycle. And it comes to the point that, or this is something which is building so much trust, when the publishing partner comes to you and asks, okay, where are you in development? What happened? Then there is already a kink in the relationship, and you don't want that. You can produce as much and as beautifully as you want. If you don't communicate it, no one knows, and then people get insecure. The second people get insecure, they ask you for a lot of overhead, a lot of stuff you didn't want to prepare because it was clear that you were doing it. So tell it. Find a way without overhead for you, or minimal overhead, to get a regular report, a regular something, include your publishing partner into your CI pipeline, and get them access to the new builds at the end of every sprint. I mean, you're QA testing them anyways, and if they want to grab it and they are clear that this is a development build, and give a bit of build notes, then this is generating so much trust that you can talk about everything.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. What I would suggest, we still have some time as written in the schedule. Let's do the Q&A, and then after Q&A, each of our experts will give their last kind of summary words. Questions? Oh no, everything was so clear. No questions at all. I never had any problems that can break the deal. All right, then let's do some summaries and farewell words for our panel. We started our introduction from that side. Now we will start from this side.
You may have seen a recurring topic from all of us on different sides is communication is absolutely key. So if something is going wrong, the wheels are falling off the project, talk to your partners early and often. Be open, be honest, and just communicate. That is the absolute best tonic for making these projects as smooth as possible. Be passionate about your project, know what you want, know where you're going with it, and know what you want to achieve. Communicate that well to your publisher or partner, investor, whoever it might be, and just continue that cadence often and regularly. Pick up the phone, drop a meeting in, weekly, monthly, whatever you need to do, just make sure you're talking to people all the time. If something is going wrong, you need help, your partner's there to help you. They're not there to like bury your company or steal your game or anything like that. They're there to actually make this game happen. So stay in contact with us all the time.
There were so many thoughts rushing through my head, and I couldn't pick one. I think, again, it's you're looking for a partnership. So one of the things I heard very often from younger or smaller or from whatever studios was, ooh, I'm talking to this and that publisher, how much can I ask for? That's the wrong question. The question is, what do you need to pull off a cool game, period. And you are looking then exactly for the right partner who is the right size. So we have publishing partners who are doing indie games, others are looking for AA, others are looking for AAA. You can't go with your indie game to a AAA publisher. That just doesn't work because the things they want to achieve are different. So what do you want to achieve? And then look for the right partners. There are super awesome lists out there with tons of materials, who are all the different publishers, who are the different investors in the gaming market. In every Me2Match system, you see the ranges they are interested in. If they're doing funding, if they're not doing funding, compile your own list out of all this for the games you're doing and the things you're targeting. What we are all looking towards to is making a buckload of money with the games we're doing, finding the right audience for our games. The buckload is also very different in size for every different party. So be clear of what would be a success for you if you trust yourself to pull it off and if you trust the partner to pull it off, because you need to surround yourselves with people who are running into the right direction in a very, very, very cold environment and in a very red ocean you're all navigating. So you're not on, it's not an evil you're fighting, it's not, you want to have, you don't want to have a fighting relationship. You want to have an extended team.
Yeah, I do agree. And as a publisher, my recommendation is also, if you want to pitch your game, prepare. So do a proper presentation, proper briefing, where you show all the core of your game, where are the monetization strategy, where are the audience you want to go. It's really important that you show that you know your game and you know why your game will be successful, why you are there to pitch in that. It's really important. It's really important that also you're realistic with some numbers that you send to the publisher to evaluate it. Again, if you have KPIs that you can share the KPIs. It's important, the transparency from the beginning. And as Christina say, is also, I think the best and ideal scenario as a publisher is work with a developer that is extension of. And I think it's to have this weekly communication where you share you share deliveries, you share whatever is new in the game is really important. And also write the hand in the moment that you are not, you will not deliver on time. It's really important, the transparency. But yeah, it takes the time and takes the time to prepare when you want to get to be pitched.
Don't be a dick. No, respect is super important. At the end of the day, you don't need to become friends with your business partner because it is business, but it is business between people, between human beings. And we're working in entertainment, yeah? So our games are supposed to create fun, good times for people. And so you want to choose the battlefields that you want to die on very early on in a partnership on your own, and you also need to take your company goals into consideration. Do you just want to make games that are fun? You know, you maybe even don't care about IP ownership, or do you want to build a company? Do you want to get acquired at some point, exit your company? That's super important because different perspectives also change the color of the flags of the other side. You know, a red flag can turn into an orange flag, maybe not really into a green flag, but you know what I mean, right? And there's different situations, different types of games, different platforms. The games industry is so colorful. Nowadays, there are so many different developers and platforms, but there's also a lot of different publishers. And last but not least, get a lawyer.
Yeah, so mostly everything was said, I think, so I'll try to recap. So first of all, choose the publisher wisely based upon the criteria matching your game at first, because that's important. Treat them kind of more even as a marketing agency rather than the funding bank or investor. Secondly, read the contract. It was very good, I think, by Christina, mentioned that yeah, if you don't understand, ask either that publisher or someone else, but with a lawyer background, right? Not colleague exactly, right? Because that's biased. And just double check on everything there in the contract, not just the big things, but also on the cash flow, for example, on the payment terms, because that's sometimes very little, right? You can be successful, but die out of cash because you have a long 90 days end of quarter payment terms that you didn't pay attention to in your contract. And you know, you have nothing to eat at the time. Then also in the end, in the relation, don't fall in the trap. We shall do it later. As also mentioned, that happens very often, right? Oh, don't mind disclosing the agreement, we're gonna rework it later, right? Or you know, that it's not important, it's our lawyer put it in, nobody understands it, right? These are not maybe traps, but sometimes they can be left and then backfire later. And lastly, I would say also build the trust from the very beginning with this publisher you already picked up or you know we're going to sign. Try to also agree with him and not always resist as the developer. So sometimes I think it is worth to hide the honor in the pocket and agree to get this feedback from the publisher, especially as they usually have a higher experience in commercial activities than developer itself, because that's a bit of a different directions they are coming from. So you get them to listen to good advices. So listen to good advices and filter the ones that are bad in order to avoid being tricked into something you don't want to do in the end. But yeah, that would be it.
Thank you very much.